Hi Keisha, I'm here to give you some feedback on your first paragraph assignment. Overall, you've done a really great job. You've seen your mark, 75%. I want to give you feedback as to where I think you can improve for next time, especially with the supporting details. And the other thing I want to say, Keisha, is that I've taken the time to color code my comments for you, which I usually do not do for students. So I just want you to know that I've tried to keep in mind to explain this in a very clear way through color, and I hope that you understand, and if we need to follow up, I can explain as well. So we'll start with your main idea. It was a strong, detailed main idea. I scored a 1.75 out of 2 only because I just felt like these words here at the end were a little bit unnecessary, plus visually the text appears a little bit different here, which is fine, but I can see that you made edits because I know that you labeled this as the corrected spelling version of the assignment. So one of my comments for your supporting points is that you don't have transition words. As you've noticed through the chapter so far that we've been talking about, each supporting point is introduced with a word like first, another reason, finally, and so I didn't see much of that in this paragraph. Your first supporting detail was the strongest, followed by your second and your third supporting detail. For the first two supporting details, supporting 1 and supporting 2, I noticed an issue with the way you organized your ideas, and so I tried to visually represent it with the color. Here, your first supporting point, you're talking about how you would need a Swiss Army knife on the island. And why would you need it? You're going to explain you would need it to cut through rope to make shelter, which is highlighted in green, and to saw through wood to make a fire. This is highlighted in red. Now, what I've done is highlight the rest of this to show in red where you talk about, in this line, about the food for a fire. And then in the next line, you go back and talk about making a shelter. And so the reason why I highlighted or color-coded this was to show you that you've broken up the ideas in a way that it makes it a little tricky for the reader to follow along, even though you've provided strong details. My suggestion to you would have been to put the green lines together, so this line and this line together, and put the two red lines together. So I would use a Swiss Army knife to cut through rope to make shelter for myself so that it could be used for protection against bodily harm, whether it is a wild animal or human. I would also use the Swiss Army knife to saw through wood for me to make a fire so I can cook foods such as fish, prickly pear cactus, and chia sage. By reorganizing the ideas like that, your supporting point makes a lot more sense and would have been given 4 out of 4 for that. But because you've broken it up this way, it makes it confusing for me as a reader to follow along. Going to your second supporting point, I've highlighted in red all of the ideas that are together, and then in green, the other idea that is kind of interrupts. So the satellite phone would be beneficial for communication in case of emergency. I would also keep in contact with my friends and family. So notice here that this is your major point, communication in case of emergency. And so you're going to prove, the satellite phone is beneficial. This is your major detail. Your first minor detail is because of communication in case of emergency. And then your second minor detail is to keep in contact with my friends and family. To explain or provide examples of the emergency, you spend 4 lines doing that, which is great. But then to explain your second minor detail, you don't elaborate. So I wanted to show you the color contrast to show that this line should actually come after all this explanation about what to do in case of an emergency. So again, organizing your ideas in the proper way is important. Here, the last supporting detail I thought was the most organized. I scored it 2.5 out of 4. At the same time, it was also the most general, lacking specific details. I would Bring a large boxes of matches. It will help me to sterilize my water, preventing me from catching any waterborne diseases. Give me an example. It would also help keep me hydrated always. Explain to me why this is important, or why hydration would be an issue on a deserted island to begin with. Imagine that I don't understand and that I'm someone who would be on an island and drink any water that I see. Then you move on to your second minor detail, which is to build a fire to prevent hypothermia and frostbite. Again, explain to me why this is important. And also, you've already mentioned the fire in your first supporting point, so it feels slightly repetitive. Other than that, the concluding sentence is great. I can see you worked very hard on this paragraph, Keisha, and I do think that for the most part, it is a job well done. So I want you to keep up the good work and then think about how to incorporate this feedback for your next paragraph assignment.